Hello, everyone. Welcome to Lit Lovers 2021. Welcome. Tonight's presentation, we're going to talk all about forthcoming books. So books coming out later this spring, summer, and a few into the fall. I believe this is our 5th year at doing Lit Lovers. And in the past, we've had something of a festival style with snacks and crafts and all that kind of thing. But this time it's going to be mostly just a presentation since we have to do it virtually. But we are going to be giving out some door prizes, some attendance prizes at the end of the presentation. So stick around for that because you do have to be here to claim your prize. We're going to be giving away some Barnes & Noble gift cards. So we hope that makes the festival part fun for you. This is actually our 2nd time doing Lit Lovers in a virtual format. Lit Lovers 2020 was our very first webinar style virtual program back in May last year. So if you have come last year and then again this year, thank you so much for supporting us during this year of virtual programming. We really appreciate it. And of course, one of the reasons we have Lit Lovers is because this is National Library Week. So thank you so much for supporting your library this year, especially, but really every year. We love bringing you books and resources. And so yay, happy National Library Week to you. Okay. So tonight's program is in a webinar format. So that means that your camera and microphone are not active. So though you can see and hear us, we can't see and hear you, and you can't see and hear each other. So if you're used to having snacks at Lit Lovers, feel free to eat your snacks because no one can see you. We are going to have a Q&A at the end of the presentation if we have some time. So please hold your questions until the end of the presentation. Towards the end, we will enable the chat function. It's a little icon that looks like a speech bubble with the word chat underneath it. You may need to wiggle your mouse or lightly tap on your screen in order to get that icon bar to appear. But you'll just click on the chat icon. A box will open up where you can type in your questions or comments. And we do have a staff member monitoring our chat, and she will turn it on towards the end of the program so that we can have some questions at the end. We also have enabled the live closed captioning. So you can show the captions or hide the captions or change the font size using the live CC or the live transcript CC icon. So, and again, you may need to wiggle your mouse or lightly tap on your screen to get that icon bar to appear. But yeah, you can show or hide the captions there. So tonight's presenters are myself. I'm Sarah. I work in adult services in Reader's Advisory. I'm joined by Harry, who also works in adult services Reader's Advisory. And then we have Cindy and Jennifer, both from acquisitions. Cindy orders all of the AV for the entire library. She'll mostly be talking about books that are going to come out in audio. But yeah, she orders all of our movies, all of our music, all of our audiobooks. And Jennifer orders all of the print books for the adults in the entire library. So they're definitely book experts, and I want to thank them so much for taking time out of their acquisition schedule to present with us tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and get us started. So my first pick is Sorrowland by Rivers Solomon. It comes out May 4th, so just in a few weeks. My books will be in release date order. So that's the order that they're in. So this is a genre-bending kind of sci-fi gothic horror novel. And in it, the main character, Vern, is a 15-year-old African-American girl who is married to the leader of a cult called Caneland. It's a very repressive cult. She suffers some abuse. They force her to take drugs. It's a very strange place. And at the beginning of the novel, she's 7 months pregnant with twins. And so she escapes into the woods because she wants to be able to raise her children in an environment that is, freer and safer. But she can't really escape the danger, no matter how far she runs, because the community attempts to find her. She also seems to be followed by this violent fiend of some kind. And she also starts to experience a strange physical, almost monstrous changes in her body. So she can't really hide in the woods forever. She must uncover what Caneland really is and what they have done to her in order to ensure the safety of her new family. So I read another book by Solomon last year, An Unkindness of Ghosts, that I just loved. That book was about a generation ship, which is like one of those huge ships that's meant to take centuries to take humans to a new colony planet. And that ship ends up recreating kind of a plantation style power structure. And so, you know, the book encouraged readers to think about whether we can really escape our very human problems by running away to the stars. So this book seems to, again, visit many of the themes from that book, you know, race, gender, religion, science, and family, but in another completely original story. So I am definitely looking forward to this one. And you should check out some of River Solomon's other books if you haven't. Okay, next up I have Mary Jane by Jessica Anya Blau, and this is coming out May 11th. This is like a 70s retro coming of age novel. And Mary Jane is a teenage girl who has gotten a summer job as a nanny for a local doctor's family. And it's, you know, just the kind of job that you would expect to train up a nice middle-class girl to raise a nice middle-class family. But the Cohns end up being not what she expects. They're this very free-spirited family whose home is filled with clutter and counterculture bumper stickers. And she definitely doesn't want to tell her mom that the doctor's sole patient for the whole summer is a famous rock star who is coming to live with them in order to get sober over the course of the summer. So yeah, the Cohns will of course benefit from Mary Jane's, you know, nutritious meals and household cleaning routines. But she might learn some things from them too about different ways to be a family and an adult, and how music might fit into her life. As you can see, the book has been blurbed by Nick Hornby, who also writes a lot of books that have to do with music. So I think this will be a great pick for those who liked the movie Almost Famous, and it's sure to be filled with plenty of 70s nostalgia. So if you grew up in the 70s, this is probably a great book for you. Okay, so my next book is The Chosen and the Beautiful, and it comes out June 1st. This is a fantasy adaptation of The Great Gatsby, where demon blood has been banned along with alcohol during Prohibition. The main character is Jordan Baker, who is the childhood friend of Daisy Buchanan, who you'll remember from The Great Gatsby. Jordan is of Vietnamese descent, but she was adopted by a wealthy white family. She is a very talented golfer, can practice paper magic, and has been given really every advantage of education and social connection. But due to her race and her sexual orientation, she's still often seen by those in 1920s high society as kind of an exotic outsider. Daisy, her friend, fixes Jordan up with Nick Carraway, you might recognize as the narrator of The Great Gatsby. But Jordan is not really interested, of course. Jay Gatsby, however, is interested in Nick and wants her to help make the connection there. If you love literary reinterpretations, jazz era historical fiction, or fantasy that places magic like right into our world, then you'll be looking forward to this one just as much as I am. It's from the fantasy and sci-fi publisher Tor. It's getting a lot of buzz, so definitely check this one out. Okay, next I have Everyone Knows Your Mother is a Witch by Rivka Galchen. It comes out June 8th. This one is set in the 1600s, and it's actually based on a true story, the true story of Katharina Kepler, who was the mother of the astronomer Johannes Kepler, she was actually tried for being a witch. She, in the book, is an illiterate herbal healer and also something of like a bossy busybody and a braggart about her successful children. So that has not won her a lot of friends in town. The whole incident starts when the deranged wife of the town's third best glazier accuses her of poisoning her. So then it seems like everyone in town has some sort of story about a mystery pain or an illness. Oh, my arm hurt when I walked by her house. And it just sort of snowballs from there. Katharina at first thinks this is ridiculous, but it becomes this very serious issue. And her son Johannes has to pull himself away from his research in order to come and defend her. The story is framed as a first-person account of her defending herself to her neighbor, and she's really quite a character. Kirkus Reviews says that it's quote, by turns witty, sly, moving, and sharp, and is a marvel to behold. So that's pretty high praise from Kirkus, who is known for being pretty stringent in its reviews. So definitely good for fans of The Crucible, but I think its focus on an older woman gives the reader more to consider about gender and class and the power of independent women. I love a book that is both funny and serious, so this one really seems right up my alley, and maybe it'll be up yours too. Okay, next I have Under the Whispering Door, which is coming out September 21st, so in the fall, so it's a little bit of a wait. But TJ Klune's last novel, The House in the Cerulean Sea, was incredibly heartfelt and enchanting, and it quickly became a library staff favorite. If you have come to several of these book talk virtual programs, you may have seen staff talk about it. It's ended up in several of our book talk programs this past year. So I was really excited to see that he had another one coming out this year. Clune himself describes it as, quote, a queer romantic comedy about ghosts in a tea shop. So that sounds like it will have the same signature charm as his previous work, so I'm excited about that. It is about a man named Wallace Price, who is surprised to find out that when he dies, the Reaper doesn't take him directly to heaven or hell, but to a tea shop, whose owner also ferries souls to the other side. However, Price isn't really quite ready to pass on yet. He feels as if he has barely even begun to start living. He spent all of his life caring about profit and the success of the law firm he founded. So he basically is able to negotiate 7 days to live out an entire life. I just finished reading The Midnight Library by Matt Haig, and so I think those who like that book, which is getting a lot of buzz right now, will probably like this one too. It's the kind of book that really makes you think about what it means to live and to die, to grieve, and probably also to drink tea. So yeah, another one of these books that's a little bit funny, a little bit sweet, a little bit serious, which is always something that I like. Plus, it's got a great cover. Look at that cover. Okay, and then my last book is The Hill We Climb and Other Poems by Amanda Gorman. This comes out September 21st. April, this month, is actually National Poetry Month. So it's fitting to highlight this book now, even though it won't be coming out until September. If you've come to several of these others, you know that I do like poetry, and I do like to talk up poetry books from time to time. I just think poetry is a really wonderful way to experience emotion, like experience the emotion of other people. That it gives you that sort of empathetic connection with other people through poetry. So yeah, so I'm gonna talk up a poetry book. Even though, so Amanda Gorman was the youngest inaugural poet ever. She read The Hill We Climb at Biden's inauguration. And even though there were performances by the likes of Lady Gaga and Garth Brooks, and of course, the appearance of Bernie's Mittens, Amanda Gorman's poem, The Hill We Climb, for me, was just the most inspiring part of the inauguration. I got chills when she read this part of the poem, which I'm gonna read for you. Somehow we've weathered and witnessed a nation that isn't broken, but simply unfinished. We, the successors of a country and a time where a skinny Black girl descended from slaves and raised by a single mother can dream of becoming president, only to find herself reciting for one. And yes, we are far from polished, far from pristine, but that doesn't mean we are striving to form a union that is perfect. We are striving to forge a union with purpose. Oh, yeah, I just really, it got me. And a very pretty gift edition of this poem was published in hardback last month, but this is Gorman's first full-length book of poetry that's coming out in September. She also has a kid's book coming out that month, and she's actually on the cover of Vogue next month. So she's having kind of a moment right now. I think she's really a poet to watch, so don't miss this one. That way you can say, I read her first book of poetry, 50 years from now when she's like a poet laureate. All right, so next I'm going to hand it off to Harry.
Thanks, Sarah. My first book, I was thinking about what to call this list. I'm going to call it the secrets list. So my first book is Whereabouts by Jhumpa Lahiri. What you have to wonder, she has not written a book in 10 years. This author, who is Bengali American, moved to Rome and decided to write this book in Italian. So it's already come out in Europe and gotten favorable reviews, but now it's coming to the States in April. What is it about? A nameless, middle-aged university professor is wandering the streets of Rome, rethinking her life choices. Is this a reflection about the author? The reviews I've read have said that it's affecting, but I'm really interested. Why would she write a book in Italian first and set it in Italy? So this book, highly anticipated. If you've read anything by her, she's a beautiful lyrical writer, and we'll see what it's like. My next book, While Justice Sleeps by Stacey Abrams. So this, I think, is going to be a John Grisham type book. Stacey Abrams, as you probably know, is the former Georgia state representative who in her prior life was a municipal tax lawyer for a big law firm. And while she was in law school, she wrote romance novels under the name Selena Montgomery. In fact, how busy could she have been in her third year of law school at Yale when she wrote her first romance novel as Selena Montgomery? The premise of this book is that the main character is a law clerk to a beloved US Supreme Court judge. The judge has an incident and lapses into a coma. And this is at the same time that there is a big case in front of the Supreme Court involving a pharma company. When the law clerk, who has been given power of attorney by the judge before he lapsed into a coma, discovers that not only was he writing the opinion regarding the pharma company case, but also owns stock in the company, you can imagine that there's all kinds of political intrigue. So I expect this to be a fast-paced book with lots of drama, right up my alley, and I'm looking forward to reading it. My next book is Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Now, if you've read Daisy Jones and the Six or The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, you know that she loves Hollywood. And this book is no exception. This is centered around one night in 1983 in Malibu, California. The wealthy Riva clan, who are the kids of a famed rock singer, Mick Riva, are all gathering for an end of summer blowout. Now, the book does have flashbacks to the 1950s through the 1970s, but this one night is all the secrets are going to come out and the house is going to end up in flames at the end. So you cannot top that. You want excitement, this book is for you. I mean, I can only imagine what the secrets are and who burned down the house. So I'm really excited about this book. I've read her previous two books and enjoyed them tremendously. My next book is Beautiful World, Where Are You by Sally Rooney. I love Normal People. She's a great author. I also read Conversations with Friends, her first book. And these books, I would describe them, if you wanted me to describe them in two words, I would say millennial angst. Lots of interior dialogues, not a lot of action, great dialogue, well written. In this book, we have two characters who know each other. One's a warehouse worker and the other one is a novelist, and they decide to go off to Rome together. Maybe they're going to meet up with Jhumpa Lahiri's character. And then there are two other characters in Dublin, so they're all millennials, and it's about what they plan their life choices to be, how they relate to each other. As I said, I imagine there are going to be a lot of angst and a lot of interior conversations about how they feel about each other. She's a great writer, so I think this will be an excellent book. My next book, Liane Moriarty, Apples Never Fall. So you're familiar with Pretty Little Lies. You're familiar with Nine Perfect Strangers. I've read many of her books, and this one is about a married couple that's been married for 50 years in Australia, and they sell their tennis academy. They have 4 children, and the children all have secrets, but The parents seem to be happily married. One day, a mysterious stranger, a young woman, shows up at their door, at the married couple's door, and she's bleeding from a fight with her boyfriend. They take her in because they're good people, and the next thing, Joy, the mother, disappears. All the secrets are going to come out. So this being a Liane Moriarty book, there's going to be a lot of domestic drama, secrets, and probably a happy ending, but I'm looking forward to reading it. My next book is Colson Whitehead, who is a very versatile author. You've probably read The Underground Railroad or The Nickel Boys by him. This one is set in 1960s Harlem, and it's about Ray. And which of these is he? Is he a devoted family man who also sells bargain price furniture, or is he a fence for the mob? Well, it turns out that Ray is descended from a family of crooks and lowlifes. And one of his relatives has a plan to burglarize the leading hotel in Harlem. So, of course, Ray, who's always strapped for cash, is in. He wants to make some extra money by fencing these stolen goods. Little does he realize he's going to run into corrupt cops, the real mafia, the people who have been robbed, and who knows who else in Harlem. What I think is interesting about Colson Whitehead, who is a brilliant writer, is he went to elite private schools in New York, came from wealthy parents, and graduated from Harvard. And yet, he can write about crime in Harlem. So I'm really interested to compare this to Deacon King Kong by James McBride, which is set in the Bronx around the same time. And that is a dazzling book if you haven't read it. My next book is Cindy's book, so I'm going to pass it off to her.
Thank you, Harry. I appreciate that. So my name is Cindy Famel. I am the AV selector for the library, which means that I buy the DVDs, the CDs, and yes, the CD books, which I adore books in audio if you can get them. I highly recommend it. So this first one is called Girl with Stars in Her Eyes by Zio Axelrod. In it, Tony B befriends Sebastian in this small dead-end town they both are desperate to get out of. They both have problems with their fathers. They just want to leave the town and really start in music careers because that is what they bond over, is music. So they make a pact that they will leave together and they will, do what they do. They will definitely work in the music industry. However, Sebastian leaves town and doesn't take Tony with him, and she never hears from him after he disappears. So when she gets older, she does decide to go ahead and try her hand as a producer. She goes to New York City and she's trying to make enough money for her own studio space. She really wants to be a producer. However, she's trying to do that through open mic nights. And if you've ever tried that, you'll know that there's not a lot of money involved. So she ends up taking a temporary gig as a guitarist for an up and coming band called the Lilies. However, what she didn't know is that the Lilies manager is Sebastian from her past. So this is a second chance romance. Zio Axelrod really knows about the music industry because she was actually a musician before she was a writer. And I heard an interview with her when she was talking about why she wrote this book. And she said she wanted to let people know that being a rock star isn't all about Grammys and sold out shows, which is also true. A lot of the reviewers really love this book because the side characters are so wonderfully fleshed out and they're all very quirky as folks are in the music industry. This would be great for anybody who enjoyed How to Kill a Rock Star by Tiffany DeBartolo, which is very similar to this. There's also a new book out. I have not read it yet. It is called The Final Revival of Opal and Nev, which is about a musical duo that were big in the 60s and then they drifted apart after the band broke up, and then they get together for a reunion show and all those secrets and all that angst comes back out. That's by Donnie Walton. I haven't read that yet, but I'm also on the holds list. Okay, my next book is called Dead of Winter by Stephen Mac Jones. If you are not familiar with Mac Jones' character, August Snow, he will probably be making his debut on some sort of streaming device soon because Ron Howard and Brian Glazer are going to be trying to make this into a series. August Snow is half Black, half Mexican, and totally awesome. This guy is amazing. He's a former Detroit cop who sued the city for corruption and obstruction, and he won a $12 million settlement from the city. However, that also got him lots of enemies, not just among the his former colleagues in the police force, but a lot of people in the city resent it because of the financial problems that Detroit has. However, he's using his $12 million for all the right reasons. He grew up in Mexican Town, which is a small ethnic neighborhood. His parents have passed away. He rehabbed the house he grew up in, which he still lives in. Plus, he's buying a lot of other of the derelict houses in the neighborhood, and he's rehabbing those as well. So often what happens though with August Snow, and it's no different in this one, somehow he always gets sucked into these like weird shadow organizations and conspiracies. In this particular book, Dead of Winter, Authentico Foods, which is located in Mexican Town and has no interest in moving, unfortunately is being put under pressure by some large corporation to sell their property. So they call in August Snow to help them out, and he uncovers this huge conspiracy where the shadow organization is trying to find safe houses for the mob. Now, these are not cozy mysteries. There's a lot of action, a lot of hostile violence. But if you like that sort of thing, I think that you'll really enjoy this. One of his sidekicks is a person named Tomas, who's a reformed thief, who is now an upstanding member of society. However, he does happen to have an arsenal in his basement, and August Snow and Tomas have to use that quite often. Stephen Mac Jones is often compared to Walter Mosley, and I don't think it's so much because they both write mysteries and because their writing styles are actually kind of different. But what I do think is that both of those authors are terrific at dealing with race in a sensitive and realistic way without putting any kind of break in these take no prisoners plots that they have. All right, speaking of plots, my next book is called The Plot by Jean Hanff Korelitz. Much more on the lighter side here. So the protagonist in this is Jake Bonner, who had been a critical darling after his first novel. It was very successful, but since then his career has been languishing. He hasn't written anything of merit. So now he is stuck in what he considers pretty much a dead-end job, doing an MFA program at a very tiny university that very few people even know about. And just to add insult to injury, he has a new student in his latest MFA program, name of Evan Parker, who is bragging about the fact that he has this terrific surefire bestseller because the plot is just so interesting. And so he doesn't even share it with the rest of the people in the program. He only shows it to Jake just because he has to get his degree. Jake, however, is not very much impressed, mostly because he doesn't really like Evan Parker. But after the program ends and Evan Parker has moved on, Jake realizes the book never came out, and then he ends up finding out that his former student has died. So he goes ahead and usurps the plot, goes ahead and writes it in his own language, puts it out there, and sure enough, it becomes an international bestseller. He's thrilled. He's doing a book tour, only then to be contacted by some unknown figure who says they're gonna out him to the public and let him know that that was not his plot to begin with. And that's just the beginning of the story. This is just a terrific kind of book. If you enjoy this kind of thing, it's very fast-paced, funny, self-deprecating. I think that you really would also like Jesse Kellerman's The Pot Boiler, which is kind of similar in that a gentleman he publishes the book of his best friend who passes away, only to find out that there was a lot more to the thrillers that his friend wrote than he ever knew. There's also another new book coming out called Who is Maud Dixon by Alexandra Andrews, where a young person in publishing ends up trying to take over the identity of like a nom de plume of a reclusive author. So I'm also looking forward to that one. My next book goes back to the mystery genre. It is called Dead Girls by Nakisa Afia. And this is her debut novel, but she already has a whole series planned for this character whose name is Louise Lloyd. These novels take place in 1920s Harlem. So they are period pieces. That's during the Harlem Renaissance as well as during Prohibition. In this case, Louise Lloyd has had a traumatic past. She had been kidnapped when she was younger, though she was one of the lucky ones to escape. However, she's still haunted by what had happened when she was younger. So she tries not to get involved when she finds out that other young African-American girls are disappearing in her neighborhood. She tries to concentrate on work. She has 2 jobs. She works in a cafe during the day, and she works at a speakeasy at night called the Zodiac Club. And just to kind of give you a taste of what she writes, she describes the music in the club as bouncing off the ceiling like a feral animal in heat. So unfortunately, more girls keep disappearing in Harlem at this time, and a dead body is even thrown into the doorway of the cafe where Louise works. So Louise is pretty upset, but she still doesn't want to get involved. However, she ends up getting arrested, and even though it's for a misdemeanor, the police can tell how smart she is and how savvy she is, and they haven't been making any headway in finding out about these disappearances, but they realize because she's a woman of color and because she goes to the clubs all the time, she would have ins where these, older white men who are working for the police force wouldn't. So they recruit her very unwillingly, but they really give her no choice. And she does want to help these other young women. It's just she's afraid, and she has good reason to be afraid. This is perfect for people who are Phryne Fisher fans, the Miss Fisher mysteries that also take place during the Jazz Age, or if you enjoy Chester Himes' classic Gravedigger Jones and Coffin Ed mysteries that take place in Harlem in the 1950s. I do want to direct you to see her website. She has curated, Nikisa Afia has curated a whole bunch of jazz from the 1920s so that you'll have a soundtrack for this if you want to listen to it. All right. My next one also deals a lot with music, and it is called Summer Fun by Jean Thornton. In this one, Gala lives in New Mexico. She is just engrossed by this band called the Get Happies that were a California band during the Summer of Love. So think Crosby, Stills and Nash, Joni Mitchell, the Beach Boys, the Eagles, Jan and Dean. They were phenomenally famous at the time, but suddenly they imploded, went up in a supernova of creativity. And B, the band leader, who's just known by his first initial, disappears off the face of the earth and becomes a total recluse. But in this, Gala is just obsessed about this band, and she really just can't let go. She needs to find out if the Get Happies actually recorded Summer Fun, which was supposed to be their last album. And if they did, why it was never released. So she kind of goes trolling through the internet. She's searching everywhere, and she actually finally gets a hold of B, the band member of the former Get Happies, and they find they have some things in common. This book deals a lot with the beginnings of creativity, but it also deals with invention, and not just artistic invention. It turns out that Gala shares with B that she has to reinvent herself because she's a transgender woman. And then she finds out that B has a similar situation because he has to reinvent his self-image that was distorted by the huge fame that he experienced during the 1960s. This is a book that will really appeal to people who read the Taylor Jenkins Reid book that Harry mentioned, Daisy Jones and the Six, which, by the way, if you have a chance to listen to that in audio, I highly recommend it. That is an incredible book. Obviously, just to let you know, so Summer Fun is based loosely on Brian Wilson, who of course recorded the musical masterpiece Pet Sounds, but then I had a nervous breakdown. All right. My last book is called Clark in Division by Naomi Hirahara. It is also a historical mystery. It takes place in 1944, and it deals with Akio Ito and her family, who were living in Manzanar, which of course was a Japanese-American internment camp in California. Her family has lost everything. They had a business, they had a home, they had a car. They ended up having to sell it all for just pennies when they were interned. And so they are looking forward to the resettlement camp that they're being sent to, which resettlement area, which is at Clark and Division in the suburbs of Chicago. And the Ito family think they might have a little bit of an edge over some of the other ones because the eldest daughter, Rose, who Aki really admires, got there first. So she was supposed to set some things up. She was supposed to do some networking for them. However, it didn't turn out that way because on the eve of their arrival, she's killed in an L train accident. So Aki and her parents are devastated, but then they find out from the police who do an autopsy after the death that her sister Rose had an abortion recently, and they rule it as a suicide because of that. Aki just feels that her sister, who is so sophisticated and so polished, she's shocked that she had ever allowed herself to become pregnant, but even more than that, she doesn't believe that she was the type to commit suicide. So even though she is a stranger here, and this is a totally new area for her, she decides that she has to solve the mystery and find out what really happened because she needs justice for herself and her parents who have lost so much. You may be familiar with Naomi Hirahara. She has done a lot of research with Japanese Americans who were in internment camps, and she ended up and blended a lot of those stories that she heard within this fictional narrative, but it is based on a true incident that happened where a young woman was killed and it had terrorized the Japanese American settlement at Clark and Division. Next up is my colleague Jennifer from Acquisitions.
Thanks, Cindy. Listening to Sarah, Harry, and Cindy, I realize how much I would prefer to have them describe books for me while I'm ordering books rather than reading reviews all the time. So, okay, my first book tonight is Dial A for Aunties by Jessie Q. Sutanto. The hero of this comic novel is Madeline Chan. She is a 20-something photographer and she works in her family's wedding business. Her two big problems in life are dealing with her overbearing family and getting over a breakup with her college boyfriend. Now, young people feeling aggrieved by family interference in their personal lives is nothing new, but her family takes it to extremes. For instance, her mother has joined a dating site in her name, impersonating her daughter, using pictures, has been communicating with several potential suitors, and has set up a blind date for her. So that's pretty intense interference. So she ends up going on this blind date, and through a series of accidents and miscommunications, this blind date ends up dead. So now Medi has even bigger problems, and she's forced to face them with the love and support of her family, who she thought was interfering too much. So the author introduces the novel with some family history about the language in the book. So all four of Sutanto's grandparents moved from China to Indonesia in the 1920s. Then the children in her generation were sent to Singapore for schooling, and they adopted English as their primary language. And the result is that their whole family is basically trilingual, speaking a combination of Mandarin, Indonesian, and English. So different generations are more comfortable with different languages. So whereas the author is most comfortable in English, but she can also speak Mandarin, her Indonesian is kind of halting and broken. And then her parents are fluent in Indonesian and Mandarin, but they're less confident in English. And she explains all this because some of the language barrier communications in the book are part of the humor of the novel, and she's careful to say how proud she is of her heritage. So this book is about as much cheery fun you can have when it's really about an accidental death, but it's still sort of lighthearted. In the acknowledgement, the author notes that Netflix will be making a movie of this book. And this is something we've been noticing a lot in library land, is that books are getting series and movie deals very quickly, even before the book is published. It used to be a book would come out and it may get popular and then it would be adapted. But for more and more titles these days, that timeline has collapsed. So next. My next book is The Premonition by Michael Lewis. And if you look closely at the subtitle, it's a pandemic story. And before some of you groan and say that it's too soon for a nonfiction book about what we've all just been going through, hold on while we talk about Michael Lewis. You know Michael Lewis. He's written many best-selling books like Moneyball and The Blind Side, and he's known for making mundane nonfiction read like thrillers. He even made mortgage-backed securities exciting in The Big Short. So I think we can be confident that this will not be the same old stuff that we've been reading about the pandemic. So in 2018, Michael Lewis wrote a book called The Fifth Risk, in which he posed the question of what happens when government agencies tasked with leading the country through natural disasters or cyber attacks or epidemics are unprepared. So in 2020, when the coronavirus arrived in the United States, Lewis contacted some of his sources for that book, and he began talking to people, and soon he had an idea for another book. The people he spoke to talked about this pandemic as sort of a dry run or a learning experience for future challenges. This could sound grim, but Lewis seems to be framing it as a potential positive. He writes that it is a superhero story where the superheroes seem to have lost the war, but all they've lost is a battle, and there's a war that they are going to win. Lewis tells the story through three characters, or three protagonists. They're not characters because they're real people. A biochemist, a public health worker, and a federal government employee, each trying to avert catastrophe in their own way. Much of the story takes place before it was widely known how quickly the virus was spreading through the country. So if you're in the market for a hopeful book about the pandemic and our ability to face future challenges, this one might be for you. My next book is another nonfiction, Noise, A Flaw in Human Judgment by Daniel Kahneman. Daniel Kahneman won the Nobel Prize for Economics in 2002. He is an Israeli psychologist and economist who transformed modern economic thought by challenging the assumption that our decisions are driven primarily by rational thought. His 2011 book, Thinking Fast and Slow, was a fascinating summary of his work. You might expect a nonfiction book by an award-winning economist to be a slow, tough read, but this book was a delight, a totally accessible study of how we make decisions. For this forthcoming book, Kahneman is joined by strategic thinking professor Olivier Sibony and legal scholar Cass Sunstein. The three explore what they call noise, which they describe as variability in judgments that should be identical. To explain what they mean, the book asks readers to imagine that when presented with a set of facts and asked to make a choice, you are very likely to make different decisions depending on whether it is morning or evening, what day it is, and who is around you at the time. The authors illustrate how this noise affects decisions in law, medicine, performance reviews, and hiring. This raised questions about how we buy books for the library collection. For instance, am I more likely to order a cookbook before lunch if I'm hungry? If I am dreaming of vacation, am I buying more travel books? That's noise. The book goes further than just describing the problem. It offers recommendations for creating the best environment for clear thinking and choice. They write about decision hygiene and blocking out all of the random factors that are irrelevant to your decision but may be influencing it. A word of caution about this book. I mentioned that I was surprised by how engaging and accessible Thinking Fast and Slow was, but a couple of the reviews I've read of this book use words like dense, complex, and even jargon heavy, but reviewers agree that it is insightful and useful. My next book is a novel, Razorblade Tears by S.A. Cosby. This novel is a lot of things. It's a revenge thriller, an unlikely allies story, a meditation on fathers and sons, and a tale of human redemption. A Black father and a white father join forces to find the killers of their sons. Ike Randolph has been out of jail and law-abiding for 15 years. When he sees police officers at his door, he prepares for bad news. He learns that his son Isaiah and Isaiah's husband Derek have been murdered. Ike had never really accepted that his son was gay and did not attend Isaiah and Derek's wedding. Similarly, Derek's father, Buddy, was also estranged from his son. Buddy Lee was ashamed of having a gay son, and Derek was ashamed of having a criminal father. Ike and Buddy Lee come together seeking vengeance, but also in a recognition that they had not been the kind of fathers that they perhaps should have been. So partly to get revenge, partly to make amends, they set off on a search throughout the rural South for the killers. This is another book that already has a movie deal attached, and apparently there was competitive bidding on this one. S.A. Cosby's previous book, Blacktop Wasteland, was a surprise hit of last year. A movie for that one is also in the works. The two titles, Blacktop Wasteland and Razorblade Tears, I think are great titles because they don't really tell you much, but they're very menacing. So gives you a sense of what you're in store for. My next book is While We Were Dating by Jasmine Guillory. Jasmine Guillory has a pretty good track record for fun, quirky romances. Starting with the book The Wedding Date in 2018, she has written 6 novels. While these are not a series in the sense that you need to read them in order, there are connections between the books, like the main character of one novel will be a minor character in another novel. These are contemporary romances, mostly about unexpected couples. Ben Stevens is a busy advertising executive with no time for a serious relationship. But when he lands an ad campaign with gorgeous movie star Anna Gardner, he finds her charming and down to earth. He can't help flirting with her, just a little. Anna Gardner is driven and ambitious. She is waiting to hear about her next movie, and she's finding Ben Stevens quite distracting. She too finds herself flirting, just a little. The two grow closer as they weather a family emergency and began sharing personal hopes and troubles. Soon the pair are wondering whether theirs is a flirtation that is simply good for publicity or might be the start of something real. This is lighthearted fun, and the bonus is that if you like this one, there are 5 more books to read. My last book this evening is Crossroads, A Key to All Mythologies by Jonathan Franzen. If you all have followed the career of Webster Grove's native, Jonathan Franzen, you may have seen that in the last decade or so, it has become somewhat fashionable to criticize him a little bit. And more people are talking about how maybe his great reputation is not deserved. So full disclosure, I'm a huge fan, and I think he's one of the greatest writers around right now. So when I heard that he had a new book coming out, I was beyond excited. The even better news is that this is the first of a trilogy. You may recognize the subtitle, A Key to All Mythologies. This is a reference to George Eliot's novel, Middlemarch. In that book, the Reverend Edward Casaubon has spent his entire life working on a book called A Key to All Mythologies, and it's supposed to be a great work that will transform scholarship. It ultimately does not amount to be the great work that he hoped it would be, and by using this as a subtitle, Franzen brings up ideas of great ambition, failure, and self-delusion. The 3 books of the trilogy will focus on 3 separate generations. In Crossroads, the Hildebrandt family prepares to celebrate Christmas in 1971. Russ is the associate pastor at a suburban Chicago church, and he's considering leaving his marriage. His wife, Marion, is similarly unhappy. Their children, Clem, Becky, and Perry, are each making changes in their lives, struggling towards becoming the people they hope to be someday. Franzen is masterful at telling a large, sweeping story while also focusing very narrowly on the individual. This novel is described as both comic and harrowing. A couple of years ago, Franzen told the New York Times that he supposed he might only have 1 more novel to write. It looks like this 1 more novel is actually going to be 3. Lucky for us. So I'm gonna send this back to Sarah. Thank you all for being with us tonight.
Thanks, Jennifer. Yeah, thank you all for coming. We have a few more things to do. So I wanted to let you know about our personalized reading service. You got a lot of great suggestions for books tonight, but of course, all of them are forthcoming. So if you're looking for something to read while you wait for one of those, please do try our personalized reading service. This is a form that you can fill out on our website where you tell us what you like and you don't like, and we will send you a list of 5 titles that we think you may enjoy. And Harry and I are the ones that fill these out. So yes, please do. We love making suggestions for all of you. And then if you enjoyed tonight's program, you may enjoy coming to one of our other upcoming virtual programs. Two that are coming up in May that you may be interested in if you're a book lover. Our Librarians Read in a Galaxy Far, Far Away. That is coming up on Tuesday, May 4th at 7 p.m. This is our Star Wars Day program. We're doing this in partnership with St. Charles City County Library. They will have some readers, we will have some readers, and we're all going to be reading aloud science fiction, short stories, or excerpts or poetry, that kind of thing. So sci-fi of all kinds, not necessarily Star Wars related, but just our homage to Star Wars by having a sci-fi reading event. And then coming up on Monday, May 24th, we have Noteworthy Nonfiction Reads. This will be another book talk event, kind of like this one, but we're going to focus entirely on nonfiction. So nonfiction of all kinds. I'm not sure of all the titles yet, but there'll probably be things like biographies and science and history, memoir, all that kind of stuff. So if you're a nonfiction reader, definitely sign up for that one. All right, so I think we have a little bit of time for questions, and then I'd love it if you could stick around. We are going to have a drawing after the questions where I'll draw names for our Barnes & Noble gift cards. So, but let's see if we have any questions. And if all of our presenters want to turn our cameras and microphones back on for the Q&A, and we'll see if Rebecca has any questions for us.
Yes, and yes, indeed. There's certainly some comments coming in about how much everyone's enjoyed the program. They always enjoy the opportunity to hear about new books. And someone mentioned I've added more and more titles to my wish list. So, and so have I. I think I added a dozen. So thanks, guys. So the first question is, someone's wondering how you went about like choosing your recommendations. Do you get advanced copies?
I can go ahead if you want. Okay. Yeah, the library does receive advanced copies, and we have a system to share those with the staff. But I haven't, for me anyway, I haven't read all these books. 1 year for Lit Lovers, I did try to read them, and I only would choose ones that I could get copies for, but that kind of limits your choices. So what I tried to do is get a mix of different kinds of books. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I look at reviews. There are a couple of websites that have information about advanced books that are available to people that work in libraries like us, and people that work in the publishing and the book selling industry. So there's Edelweiss and there's NetGalley. So I did a lot of like going through it, like what is coming out in my favorite genres there, and then you can request digital advanced copies through them. So I was able to read not the whole book, but the beginning of 2 of mine through digital advanced copies from Edelweiss. So, but yeah, I mean, there are other places, you know, that you can look at, you can see advanced things coming out through Amazon. So that's another way you can see books that are coming out soon. And then quite honestly, you can just Google like science fiction spring 2021 and like things will come up, you know, because publishers want to create buzz about their books. So but that's how I go about it, those sources.
Mm-hmm. Cindy?
I usually use Booklist is one of my favorite review sources, and they do a lot of online interviews with authors for their upcoming books. And that is actually how I found 2 of these, both the Zio Axelrod and Stephen Mac Jones. Though I had read Stephen Mac Jones, or listened to, highly recommend the audio on Stephen Mac Jones. I had listened to the first 2 in the series already, and I already loved them. So that just made me all more excited.
Wonderful. And Harry, where do you find your books? Very similar sources?
I read Booklist and Library Journal and Publishers Weekly like Cindy and Jennifer do.
Mm-hmm.
I think I looked at half a dozen different sources to try to come up with exciting titles.
Yeah. So I think one of you mentioned like where you can read ebooks before they're published. Sarah, I think you mentioned Edelweiss. What are the other, is it NetGalley? There's NetGalley.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Are there any others that you would recommend?
I would say Goodreads
Mm-hmm.
also.
Yeah, And sometimes
Goodreads is
you
a
can,
good source.
sometimes the publishers will put out like a teaser chapter or something. I will let you know, like Edelweiss and NetGalley, like not everyone can get advanced copies there. You do have to ask for them, and you kind of have to make a case for like who you are. So like not just any person can get advanced copies through those channels. You have to kind of be someone who works in the library or publishing or book selling industry. So.
Oh, okay. So that's why I know about it, and that's why a lot of my friends use it because
Yeah.
we're librarians. But
Exactly.
we
Yeah.
got the in. Okay. And the question came in about like how much do you read on a weekly basis? Like these are a lot of great books that are coming up. So yeah, talk to us about your reading habits and how you read so many books.
Well, I think it's kind of, we joke about this at the library because people think that we get to read all day, and we wish.
Yeah.
I like to joke that I no longer read books, I just read about books. Because if, so to order all of the books for all the branches, I mean, we can't read them. We just have to be like, okay, that looks good, yeah. But I mean, in our personal lives, I think we're all big readers.
I read a lot, but I'm a slow reader. So that just means I lose a lot of sleep because I am, up reading at night with the big cat in my lap, and usually can't put the book down. The other thing is I love audiobooks, as I mentioned before. And so I have a 20-minute drive to and from work, and I also go see my mom on a regular basis. And that's a long drive, and it's a good thing because I can get through a lot of chapters. So that's something I really enjoy doing. And now the great thing is you're doing two things at once because you're getting from A to B, but you're also listening to like great stories. And I'll tell you, a terrific narrator will really make a good story great.
Yeah, I listen to audio too. I mean, I like to read like print books, but I do listen to a lot of audio. When you listen in an e-audio format, you can also speed them up. So I tend to listen to my e-audio books at 1.5 to 2 times speed. So that like helps because yeah, you can, we've actually answered this question at another of, so everyone always thinks that we read tons, and I'll actually say, Harry will say he reads a lot, but I think Harry's kind of a speed reader. But I would say most of the people that work at the library are just like your average avid reader, and most of us probably in our spare time read between 1 and 3 books a month, because we have jobs like other people, but we read about, like Jennifer said, we read about books a lot. And I put tons and tons of books on hold, and I carry like bags and bags of books home with me. And then I read the front and the back and the inside a little bit. I'll read like the first chapter or two. And sometimes I read the end, and then I let them go back into the world. So I do that to a lot of books. I actually like read, like sit down and read, or like listen to the whole audio. I probably only read between 1 and 3 books a month. So
that's still well above average. Sarah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And Harry, I think you said last time you read like 100 books a year, right?
I have 150 holds right now over over 3 library systems. But I'm like Sarah. I think what she said is right. Sarah and I do the personalized reading list, so I feel like I have to be familiar with multiple genres, and I will read the first chapter, and then I'll read maybe the beginning of every chapter after that, and then I'll read the last chapter. I have a pretty good sense of what the book is about, but I do read books from cover to cover if it's something I like, and I'll listen to books every morning on double speed like Sarah recommended.
Yeah. Sarah, I know that we need to wrap up here. Can we just have one more question? I think it's a good one. Do you know how soon folks can order in advance for the library in general? Like you mentioned so many great books. How soon can people place them on hold?
Now.
Generally. Okay.
Oh, so, well, okay. So generally, I try not to order, well, we don't order things that are going to be published more than 6 months in advance. But because of the virus, all publication dates got all mixed up. And so we have a lot of books that we have had on order that were more than 6 months away. But I think all of the books we talked about today are already in the catalog, and you can put your holds on them.
because Jennifer did that for us special.
Nice work.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jennifer. And I'm sorry we didn't get to all the questions, but I know that we need to get to the raffle, right, Sarah?
Yeah, we're going to do a raffle. I am going to stop recording. So before we do the raffle part. So if you are in the future watching this recorded, thank you for joining us and watching us. And I hope you have a great day. But for you who are with us live, we're going to do the raffle now. So I'm going to stop recording.